Happy holidays and welcome to Cage Minds Uncensored. I'm your host, Micah Frankel. Riding solo this week, just me, no guests. Just gonna have a little chat, you and me. Leave everyone else to enjoy the upcoming holidays. Got a shout out to Mac10, MMA CK10, Edwin Ruiz, the I Got Your Back anti-bullying campaign. Thank you for the support. Everybody on Facebook, check him out. That's MMA CK10. Bright colors. Love the designs. Thank you for the support. Talking about social media, as I said, go to Facebook and check out Mac10. While you're there, Cage Minds Combat Sports News. It's Cage Minds MMA on Twitter and Instagram. Hit me up there also. This weekend that passed us, we had 5 events on tap. Bellator closed out the year, Titan FC, LFA, all on Friday. So we'll start off there. Bellator closed out the year overseas. So this was some Bellator-ish because most of the card was Bama. Bellator had the debuts, though, of Michael Mayday McDonald and Valerie Trouble Letourneau, both UFC title challengers. You also had Philip DeFrays, a UFC vet, heavyweight submission artist, catching a guillotine choke win over MMA vet James Thompson. Thompson has not fared well in the Bellator cage. In the co-main event, Letourneau took on former Tough alum Kate Jackson, and this was a Letourneau-dominated and controlled fight, doing so with her counter-striking. A lack of creativity from Jackson, who had a straightforward blitz in, and that's really all she had to offer. A good takedown in the second from Jackson, but Letourneau was all offense from being on bottom, throwing up a triangle, vicious elbows, a good debut win. You would expect Valerie Letourneau will most likely, I believe, be the first woman challenging Ilima-Lei Macfarlane for that flyweight title. In the main event, Michael McDonald versus Peter Legier, and this fight was totally dictated and controlled by McDonald, by his counter-striking. Legier trying to attack, but he was the smaller man. At times, McDonald just able to counter off of popping his jab, waiting for Peter to come in forward. McDonald, when he needed it in the late second round and in the third round, found his takedowns, got to side control. A big uppercut landed in the second round is what damages up Legier around his left eye. McDonald says after the fight that he broke his right hand. What leads us to Bellator news actually about the bantamweight division real quick for everybody. Darian Caldwell will defend the bantamweight title against Leandro Higo at Bellator 195 on March 2nd. I'm pretty sure there's cause and effect. Cause Michael Mayday McDonald broke his hand, Leandro Higo, who rebounded from a split decision loss to Eduardo Dantes, but did miss weight for that fight. And that's what you gotta wonder. Higo missed weight for the Dantes fight, but rebounds with the decision win over Ty Minglo. I guess because Ty Minglo had beat Caldwell. Now he goes right in the mix here at 135 pounds. The Bellator bantamweight division, a little bit confusing. McDonald, you would expect that this would have been his fight, but I think the hand injury made it possible that this was Higo's fight. So Higo, the former LFA and former RFA champion, challenging Caldwell come November 2nd in Oklahoma, Thackerville WinStar World Casino. So that's how Bellator ended the year, was out there in England showing off a pair of free agent acquisitions who they're lining up for bigger fights. Some former UFC fighters that Bellator is now taking and promoting the best attributes of. You also had the Florida-based, now we're talking about the regional circuit because they're really a feeder, Florida-based Titan FC with Titan FC 47 closing out their 2017 Olympic wrestler Michael Batista shows off that Cuban wrestling that we were expecting, takes a unanimous decision from Edson Lopes. You had Gustavo Ballart, the flyweight, who packs a punch, very elusive, thick little man, taking a split decision from Bruno Mesquite. Ballart still finding a way to win. And then in the main event, you had Luis Gomez with a sick wrist, almost wrestling. It looked like wrist lock kind of when it's pro wrestling and they take the guy and you turn his arm and you go under it. Well, it did, but it was a wrist throw slam. Youssef hits his face hard and gets ground and pounded out. Your new Titan featherweight champion, Luis Gomez. Congratulations to him. You also had a really nice arm triangle from Steve Mowry and Denzel Freeman with a first round TKO. Some other brilliant finishes on the night. Now on Friday, you also had on Access TV LFA closing out the year with a title fight. UFC vet Chico Camus battling Ricky Simon for that LFA title that Leandro Higo had vacated when he signed with Bellator. Ricky Simon would put the pressure on the UFC vet Camus. Camus had been 4-0 leading into this fight since parting ways with the UFC, trying to get back. Simon would put on the pressure, would find his wrestling game, would take down Camus, and with a left elbow would cut Camus by the right eye first time they're on the ground. This would set up a repetitive cycle of things to come. Simon able to find his takedowns and implement his ground and pound as needed. The first 3 rounds were very beneficial for Simon. Started to lack off. Camus dug down deep later. The judges unanimously in favor of Simon, who ends the year LFA Bantamweight champion. Talking about some brilliant finishes on this event, you had Nate Jennerman submitting Sam Toomer in the second round with an arm triangle. Toomer was having success early in space, and then Jennerman made it a grappling match for the last half of the first round and the entire second round, imposed his will, and got his submission. In another imposing will effort, the Rufus Sport trained Cameron Olson submits Jaquez Williams with a rear naked choke in the second round. Williams early was having success with his range, with his punches, but got into too much of a brawl, allowing Olson to connect with some overhands, leading to an ill-timed takedown. And once Olson realized he had such an advantage in the first round on the ground, he forced the fight to the ground in the second round, found his finish with that rear naked choke, and the night started off with kind of a controversial stoppage, a really big controversial stoppage, as Alton Cunningham was starting to get the better of Dominic Garcia in the exchanges, had popped him with a good jab, and then with a 1-2 cross, drops Garcia, and I believe from the way Garcia his head bobbled around on the drop, but he did not hit his head when he hit the ground. He was in a defensive posture, ready to be in full guard. The referee jumps in instead of Cunningham, so a controversial finish. But Alton Cunningham, undefeated at 4-0, and an interesting prospect to keep an ear out for. Talking about other commission woes on the night at LFA 29, somehow the co-main event sees Jeff Peterson victorious, Mike Richmond utterly robbed. Richmond, with his boxing, controlled the first and second rounds, picking apart Peterson, devastating Peterson with body shots, controlling the distance, and only getting hit with leg kicks that were not greatly effective. Peterson, to his credit, did find a way to get the fight to the ground and was on top the majority of the third round. 29-28 across the board is the perfect scores for this fight, but somehow the judges screw the pooch and Richmond is defeated. Even Peterson couldn't believe it. So, interesting turn of events in Minnesota. But again, congratulations to Ricky Simon pulling off the biggest win of his career, walking out of LFA 29 as the bantamweight champion. I'd like to see him defend the title before we're talking about a call up to the UFC. That's just me. Talking about the UFC, there was UFC action this weekend. It was UFC on Fox on Saturday. The UFC in the Octagon was in Winnipeg, Canada. So a Canada heavy card. Jordan Meehan on the Fight Pass prelims puts it together. He finds what he needed. He finds a spark. He finds something in his training. And we see him put on a much more aggressive effort. Some big takedowns and ground and pound in taking a dominant decision win over Eric Silva. A much needed win from Jordan Meehan. In what was a confusingly weird fight, Olawale Bambushe used a lot of movements, angles, but forgot to attack Alessio DeSarico. DeSarico is able to finally corral Bambushe in the second, getting a tie clinch. Bambushe runs into a knee, lights out, spectacular knockout. Did I mention Instagram, Caged Minds MMA? Go check out the Instagram. We have the knockout there. Same thing with the Nordine Taleb finish of Danny Roberts. Roberts partially blocks the high kick, but the toes get him in the temple. Taleb swarms, punches, finishes Roberts. Roberts out cold, starts arguing with the ref out in a bad way. We have that finish also. Instagram, Caged Minds MMA. In a confusing back and forth fight that lasted only one round, Glory Buffando knocks down Chad LaPriest, has LaPriest completely confused by his unorthodox movement, and had stunned and hurt LaPriest with big single shots. After hurting LaPriest, though, Buffando allows LaPriest back up. LaPriest closes the distance, gets the underhooks, and drags his fight to the ground, side control to mount, ground and pound, and finishes the fight. The Canadians were on a roll on Saturday night. Julian Marquez follows up his win on Dana White's Contender Series with a guillotine choke of Darren Stewart. Don't forget to look now. The middleweights are coming. That division is getting more and more interesting all the time. Jan Blachowicz, to my surprise, pulls a minor upset, defeating Jared Cannonier. I would have honestly thought that Blachowicz, who had been in some bigger fights, would have been the favorite and the higher ranked fighter going in. I thought he was going to win this fight, and he does so with the timely takedowns against Jared Cannonier, who I really think does need to see about attempting to make middleweight, possibly, is a really small light heavyweight. Going to the main card, Glover Teixeira did not like Misha Serkinov striking, so with double underhooks, he took it to the ground, and when he finds his opening, Glover Teixeira gets the victory early in the first round, stopping Serkinov. Teixeira, not done yet, showing the Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills and the wrestling skills off that we all know he possessed. Santiago Ponzinibbio, we kind of thought he was a brawler. We thought the fight with him and Mike Perry would just be bonanzas and a crazy brawl. It wasn't. You saw Ponzinibbio attack the legs, work a good jab, and for the most part work off of a game plan in taking a unanimous decision win over Perry, controlling the first and second rounds. Mike Perry did a lot to come out hard in the third round trying, but it was to no avail, failing and even getting taken down. You had a co-main event where we have some controversy. Josh Emmett misses weight by 2.5 pounds. Ricardo Lamas still takes the fight. Emmett, the bigger man, scores a one-punch knockout. The bigger man, but the underdog. We're talking about in the featherweight division, the number 3 ranked Ricardo Lamas, who, gotta give him credit for still taking a fight on short notice against an unheralded opponent. Emmett had everything to gain in this fight, and obviously when you're looking at Lamas, there was no benefits. The benefit is you keep that company man kind of mold going. You keep that favor of the UFC brass. That's basically what there was to gain from Lamas' perspective. You were supposed to fight Jose Aldo. Aldo ends up jumping up and being able to take on Holloway, but in all that, Ricardo Lamas is left screwed. So Ricardo Lamas does what he has to do to just make a paycheck. Takes on Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett, with his power punching, uncorks a left hook that knocks out Ricardo Lamas in a dirty fashion. Again, Instagram, Cage Minds MMA, we have it up. Lamas' head, I think, bounced off the mat 4 times. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. A bouncing basketball. A big win for Josh Emmett. But with him missing weight, I wonder where in the rankings this will really jump him up. Obviously, from the Emmett perspective, and just rightfully so, you get a win over a guy the caliber and the skills of Lamas. This is going to jump you up. But I don't know if it fully takes you up as big as it should have been if you don't have that asterisk of missing weight, because there are weight classes for a reason, there are rankings for a reason, and if you're not able to make the weight, well, then you're not really a legitimate contender. So it still remains to be seen about Emmett being able to make 145 pounds, but at this moment, with that power, the man is a big threat. The current UFC rankings have jumped him all the way up to 5 in the featherweight division. And I gotta be surprised, and I gotta say I'm a little bit surprised about that, just because of the missing weight and not actually being a featherweight at this time. But a huge win nonetheless for Josh Emmett. And I would have put him in the top 10, but I probably would have had Jeremy Stevens, possibly Chung Sung Jung, Darren Elkins above, and would have had Emmett all the way down around 8, dropping Cub Swanson pretty far. Or dropping, sorry, not Cub Swanson, but the defeated Ricardo Lamas pretty far. Emmett has jumped in between now Lamas and Swanson. That's where I got Swanson's name, looking as the new rankings have Holloway at champion, Aldo at 1, Edgar at 2, Ortega at 3, Swanson, Emmett, Lamas go 4, 5, 6. The main event now in the welterweight division, looking to give us presumably a new number 1 contender for Tyron Woodley. Let's all just forget that whole Nate Diaz thing about him being offered a title shot in any division. Yeah, can we just, for my sake, please, everybody, let's totally forget that absurdity ever happened. Dos Anjos in contention, I will say now, for Fighter of the Year. Not just because of this performance, but what he has done. 3 times this year, you would have said there's a size disadvantage. Oh, is this the guy that's going to be too big at 170 pounds for Rafael Dos Anjos? And RDA has rose to the challenge. He has showed this pace, this pressure fighting ability, and he dissects Robbie Lawler for 5 rounds. You could have told me RDA beats Robbie Lawler by decision. I'd have said, yeah, he has to either decision or submission. It really would have been blown away if it would have been a knockout. But 50-45 across the board, no doubt about it. Robbie Lawler doesn't even take a round from RDA. That I would have been very, very hesitant to book if you would have told me that going into this fight. The low leg kicks, the low outside left kick, the right body kick, all night we're scoring for RDA. Really dictated the first round with those kicks. The second round, the pressure of RDA started to show, because in the first round, it was actually Lawler pushing forward a good bit. RDA cornered Lawler to a point where he unleashed a 30-second, and I believe I heard 48 strike combination. The punches that were being unleashed from RDA, it was a good technical onslaught where he was going to the body, going to the head, not throwing haymakers, trying to set things up, but for his credit, the defensive prowess of Lawler was there, an excellent rope-a-dope in avoiding a lot of damage, but the body shots were stinging and the money was being put in the bank by Dos Anjos. A third round where Lawler really seemed to again kind of find a second win, was trying to pressure, and there was enough pressure from Lawler that the round was close until a flurry in the pocket. RDA's back against the cage, and RDA sneaks in a right elbow. Lawler just kind of falls and stumbles back. It's a knockdown, and RDA rides out the last minute, 90 seconds on top, stealing what was a close third round. Almost the last hurrah of Robbie Lawler, as what happened in that stumble was, I gather, his knee gave out. A knee injury is reported by the commentary team after round 3 in between, and you could see that effect in round 4 to where the RDA jabs were even stumbling Lawler around. RDA pressed the pace, went to his takedowns in the later rounds, kept up a big pace, got into the clinch, beat up Lawler's body with knees, and turned in a full performance, defeating the former welterweight champion of the world. And in my opinion, RDA with this performance should be the number 1 contender. And there's a lot of guys out there right now talking about wanting to be the number 1 contender. Colby Covington in particular is on a trash talking campaign against Star Wars, against half the planet, it feels like. And some of it is just absurdity by now. A big win over Damian Maia, and at that point, I was in Covington's corner that he should be facing Tyron Woodley. Woodley, still desperate, still money chasing, still chasing the panties of Nate Diaz. Still chasing after that check of begging for GSP. GSP is, again, out indefinitely thanks to colitis. Diaz obviously doesn't want to fight. Him and the UFC are light years apart on financial terms. And all of a sudden, we now have Tyron Woodley announcing that he'll be going under the knife shoulder surgery. Now, with the amount of title defenses that Woodley's had, there is no reason to talk of interim titles, which I bring that up because Santiago Ponzinibbio, hearing about Woodley's surgery, called out the winner of Lawler versus Dos Anjos for an interim title fight. I can't blame the young man for trying. The Argentine, though, is out of place. If you're asking me what should happen next in the UFC welterweight division, well, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Darren Till sounds very exciting to me. Colby Covington versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson sounds very exciting to me. And RDA, with his wins over Neil Magny, taking Tarek Safadine, the former Strikeforce champion, out of the top 15, and this huge win over Robbie Lawler has really done enough, in my opinion, to be the number 1 contender. I know that Thompson called out RDA. It's funny that he was all mum the word, and I don't know who you are when Darren Till makes the call out. But because RDA has an opportunity for a title chance, now Wonderboy wants to jump in because obviously Wonderboy would like a third crack at Woodley. But after the second fight, I don't see the UFC wanting to make a Thompson-Woodley 3. I think Thompson has to do a lot. And Colby Covington, I think, needs to prove himself. That sounds like a great fight right there. Opposites, the striker who needs the space against the grappler who says he could do a lot different. Colby Covington wants to prove that he's ready for Tyron Woodley. He did a lot more damage and had a lot better fight with Damian Maia. But on the same note, RDA was a lot more dominant for a lot longer and a lot fuller performance against Lawler than the 2 minutes of fear Lawler showed against Tyron Woodley and getting knocked out. I think RDA has done enough. I think we should see Wonderboy versus Covington, Darren Till versus Ponzinibbio, and that's the way the welterweight division should go. Dark horse, though, the guy that could be a matchup nightmare for anybody, Kamaru Usman meeting Emil Mack. That has been moved back to UFC Fight Night coming up in January in St. Louis. A very exciting time for the welterweight division. Now, after the UFC on Fox event was done, it was time to turn back on Fight Pass. VFC 59 Victory Fighting Championships closed out the year. You had Dan Moret submitting Alonzo Martinez with a rear naked choke in under 2 minutes, throwing Martinez to the ground, really taking the back and implementing his will. A big win for Moret. Yuri Villafort submits Victor Moreno to retain the VFC welterweight title in just 29 seconds as Moreno decided he wanted the fight on the ground, shot into the guard, and it was a dangerous one, forcing the submission with a guillotine choke. Rufian Stotts, the budding star from VFC, a Rufus Sport trained fighter, comes out and takes care of business, gets Arnold Brandon to the ground, takes the back, forces in the rear naked choke, and still champion, having defended. Stotts had won the title, ventured outside the promotion, tasted his first ever loss, comes back, defends the title. I don't know if the UFC is going to pick him up right away. Maybe one or two more for the VFC product. I know Stotts feels he's deserving, but I'm not sure if one of your last two, even though you have been a Fight Pass figurehead for a couple VFC events, and I'm very impressed and excited for his potential. I'm not sure if one in the last two gets a call up. But then again, Rufian Stotts could be one of those guys who is a short notice replacement, but it's still somebody to remember, a bona fide star in the making from VFC. Also very good to see Yuri Villafort get back in the win column. He had suffered such a losing streak. When he made it to the big shows, he's now won 5 in a row again. Invicta FC has announced that they'll be back on UFC Fight Pass with Invicta FC 27, January 13th from Kansas City, Missouri, the Scottish Rite Temple. Brand new, signed to the promotion. Sarah Kaufman, the former Strikeforce Women's Champion, will be in the main event against Pani Kinzad. It's going to be a strikers all-out war with those two. You also have flyweights Marina Moraes and Vanessa Porto in the co-main event. Shannon Jacobson, Ashley Nichols, Stephanie Alba, Ashley Cummins have also been announced for the card. Full article going up on CageMinds.com that will have the full list of fights that has been announced. A full card already in place for Invicta's first event of 2018. No fights this weekend. Everybody have a Merry Christmas. Before we turn the calendar, though, there's still a major UFC event left. So next weekend we'll be back to talk about UFC 219. And then the following week, with recapping UFC 219, we'll still have the 2017 end of the year awards and a late thought on how this whole welterweight division shakedown, shakeup should be working out. Let's keep in mind Yancy Medeiros is coming off of a big win. Kamaru Usman, Emil Mack winner. Let's just have fun and say Usman does win that fight. How great would it be to see Usman take on Colby Covington, make that fight happen. They've had their back and forth. How great could a Carlos Condit victory over Neil Magny be, leading to a Carlos Condit versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight? Neil Magny picks up a victory over Condit. That's obviously huge. That gives Usman Mech winner big incentive to want to fight Magny, because he'd be coming off of such name recognition as Condit. Same thing for Medeiros. And Magny needs this fight with his back up against the wall after coming off of the losses to RDA and Damian Maia. Magny has had his opportunity to become a true star and a title contender. It has not happened. But I'm optimally excited from those thoughts that you could possibly see Usman versus Covington, even Mech versus Covington, or getting Carlos Condit versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Just a couple scenarios or possibilities that hit me after I thought I was done talking about the welterweight division. Some news and notes from the local scene. Fit NHB's Tim Means has read up with the UFC a 5-fight deal. The local 2018 New Mexico combat sports year gets kicked off January 27th. Holmes Boxing at Buffalo Thunder Resort and Casino. February 2nd, Battlegrounds is back. At Fit NHB, the amateur Muay Thai, MMA, and kickboxing smokers are back. Battlegrounds 30, that is February 2nd. February 10th in Denver, Colorado, Jackson Winks, Maurice Hulk Jackson will take on UFC Bellator Big Show vet Melvin the Young Assassin Gallard at Sparta Combat League. Rumor has it UFC vet Cody Freight Train East is also trying to get on that card. February 24th, Jackson's MMA Series 24 at Buffalo Thunder Resort and Casino. A great bantamweight main event. Abel Cullum from the Cullum Submission Fighting Gym and Force of One out of Clovis now will be taking on Nick St. Nick Gonzalez, the Jackson Wink representative who does his conditioning at United Fit. Same night, February 24th, but in Clovis, you're going to have a Tough Man contest presented by School of Hard Knocks Promotions. $1,000 up for grabs. No professional fighters are allowed to enter the contest, but once you enter and fill out all the paperwork, you will be registered as a professional fighter. Head on out to Clovis. Throw down, 16-ounce glove. This has been Caged Minds Uncensored. Once again, everybody have a Merry Christmas. Be safe. Thanks for listening.